Hello, everyone. Welcome to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits, The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we're your hosts, Beth
and Bridget Carnes.
And today it's kind of an extension on manifesting, which is a topic that we both have great interest in. But there's a lot of nuances to manifesting that are important to understand as we're continuing to grow this skill. And so one of the things that we're going to talk about today is the concept of when we're receiving, being in that posture of allowing in the reception versus to push something to happen. When we're pushing something, it's a completely different posture when we're hoping to attract something than if we were to submit something out there and to receive it. So we're going to talk about that. And that actually is relevant because if we are in a posture of, in manifestation, trying to push how we think it should look, then we're actually blocking receiving something because we don't necessarily know what's not only in our greatest good, but which is in the greatest good for all, which is part of how manifesting happened. And this concept of receiving and pushing came up because Bridget was actually listening to something because she listens to a lot of information. And she heard this topic and was like, we've got to riff on this. And I'm stoked to be doing that today. So do you want to set this up a little bit more?
Yeah, so yesterday, as I do, I flipped on one of the podcasts that I listen to, which is Higher Density Living. It's hosted by Alexander McCaig and Jason Rigby, and they are Ra and Law of One enthusiasts and experts. And they're going through a study of the tarot as it relates to Ra and all of this. This could be total gibberish to you, and that's okay, because the point of it is they were talking about the nature of the mind. What is the mind without any other configurations? What is it before it is preset and affected by our circumstances? What is the nature of that? And the question was, where does the mind sit and how does it work? Is it a prompter? Is it a transistor, a transmitter, or is it a receiver and a processor of information? So does the mind put information out or does it take information in?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, the natural state of the mind. So like the mind unblemished by life.
Like pure potential, like in the womb kind of mind.
Exactly.
Okay.
Pure potential. And the state of the mind at a pure potential, from a pure potential standpoint, is that it is a receiver, that its job is to take things in, process them, and eventually allow a response to occur. So one of the hosts was asked, what does it look like to live life in the way that you do? What does it feel like to live life from that pure potential point of view? So when we're talking about manifestation and allowing things and receiving things and processing things and responding versus pushing and efforting, what he said it was like was he said he took his hand and he grabbed this man who he was explaining it to by the clothes and he tugged him forward. And he said, that's what it feels like. It feels like the tug. And I feel like everyone listening to this, and I know we could talk on this, is used to the tug. Like, you know what the tug is. And a lot of the time, the tug makes no sense whatsoever. But if you get tuned enough, like if you use the mind as a receiver and you tune it to those tugs, all of a sudden, it's going to be second nature for you to respond to them. You're going to get a tug, you're going to go with it, and then eventually you're going to see why it will all play out and you'll understand why you responded to the tug in that way. I'd love for you to give your example because I feel like your tug that you got fits perfectly.
Yeah, that's great. So this is interesting. So as you can tell, we're both co-located. We're in the same location. And so we're in Rochester. New York at Bridget's house. And on my way here, right before I left and I was packing, like right before I zipped up my bag, I saw a stack of papers, and on top of it was a piece of paper, this piece of paper. And all of a sudden, I literally got pulled to put this in the bag. I didn't know why. I literally was like, it's a poem. I don't even know what it says, but it's from London in 2019 outside the Shakespeare Theater. I had taken it out of a frame, and it was just laying there, and I didn't know what I was going to do with it. So I put it in the bag and I stick it in there, and I don't think anything more about it. I just do it because I got nudged to do it. So I get here and we're talking about what episode we're going to, like, what are we going to talk about? And so we have a list of topics that we could talk about, but this was on Bridget's heart, like to talk about this particular topic because it was fresh and she was really excited about it. And I was like, okay, well, let me just check real quick and see if there's anything I have on the list that's kind of pulling out for me. And all of a sudden I was like, wait, I remember throwing something in my bag. Let me see, just out of curiosity, what was on that paper. So this is what I read. Now, mind you, she's just told you the setup for what she's been nudged to talk about today. And this is what the poem says. And this is a poet that wrote an original poem outside the Shakespeare Theater in 2019. We register, first off, the resistance, which pushes back what frustrates us. We register the no, where we push and make no progress. What goads us into violence, into force. What makes us want to rage, to lose ourselves, fists beating against the walls. This is the instructor. This says change your course. This says adjust your trajectory just a little. Keep moving now. This says something's wrong, an error in your calculation, an initial assumption which needs questioning. Try again. It is a fluid medium. It is a fluid medium. It flows. Catch the current. Let it carry you along.
And the reason this struck me so hard when she read it was because the first example that the host of this podcast gave, other than tugging on this man's shirt, was that he said, it's not about being pushed forward. It's about being pulled. And he said, it's like water in a river. He said, water in a river doesn't push itself forward. It is pulled. And then he went on to talk about how airplanes are pulled, like they suck the air in and they're actually pulled. They're not pushed. And then he gave one more example. But the water was the first one he gave. Oh, and gravity pulls, it doesn't push. But the water one, the river, and then she reads this poem and it's talking about where we push is where we go wrong. We need to adjust. We need to change the course, because if we're pushing and nothing's happening, then we've got to adjust so that we're being pulled, that we're fluid, that we're responsive, and that we flow. And we talk about flow and being in a flow state and achieving that when we're in the right path, like in the right stream for us in our lives. And so it just, I mean, when she read it, I had this, like, I needed to pause and take some breaths because it was so perfect and it connected absolutely directly with what I had just listened to. And I had this moment of, we've talked about strange loops, we talked about manifestation, we've talked about the web, all of those things coalesced in a second. And I'm thinking, if I wouldn't have gotten up and turned on this podcast and paused it at that part, because that part pulled me, and then talked about it, and then we said, what are we going to record on? I feel like this is a big concept. I want to chew on this. Let's record an episode about this. And then she opens the folder that had our podcast notes, and this happens to be in there, and she pulls it and says, I wonder, let's read and see what it says. And then it connected perfectly, and it was like this really incredible, like kind of mind-boggling moment of all of those things just came together, and all of those illustrate being tugged and responding versus pushing to make something happen. Because we tried to record a podcast episode on a different topic, and it was horrible.
Yesterday,
Awful.
we're literally recording something on a topic that I'm mustering up, and it's on our list of things to do.
Yeah.
And we're talking, and just to be real, like it like 10 minutes into it, I go, we got to stop. This sucks. Like because when something is effortless, that's the pull. It's like literally just like, it's almost like you're floating. It's like, this isn't a challenge. And I'm wondering, as you're talking, I also think that there's something to, because right timing is important, right? So sometimes you've put something out there into the universe that you're hoping to manifest. The universe has already quickly computed how this is going to come to you. So depending on the size of this or whatever, like the universe can do anything, right? It can make things happen like that, right?
Well, it's complete abundance. Like there is absolutely no lack. Everything is possible. Everything is abundant, and it's infinite.
So when we put something out there, though, into the universe, if we're comfortable waiting and we're like, we just know it's on its way, I would think we're in flow because we're satisfied and comfortable. It's not naivete. It's not like frustration. There's not these emotions. Instead, it's like, oh yeah, it's on the way, right?
And we know it's on the way.
Know it's on the way, total confidence. We just trust that that's happening, right? Because it has to be for the higher good of others as well as us. So where we push is it's good for us. But if we don't believe it's good for other people, it's not good for other people. If there's some part of us that's like, we're getting one over on somebody, or this is going to put other people out, but so what? It's for me. The universe isn't going to make that happen. But like we're going to be waiting till the cows come home, right? Like it's just not going to happen. So we do have to push to make something happen when it's not right and aligned and effortless with the universe, right?
Yeah.
But then there's a different posture in this, that when I put this in here and I'm not sitting around going, I wonder when this is going to be relevant.
Yeah.
I wonder when this is going to be relevant. I wonder when this is going to be relevant. Instead, I just put it up, stick it in there, trust if it's relevant, it will present itself. And then when that moment happened, for no reason, I didn't remember what this was about. I was like, oh,
yeah, this was even
this
more
out.
of an oops than what you set it up to be. Like it was like we opened the folder and it just happened to be.
It was right there.
Yeah,
it was next to the sheet that I was pulling out, and I was like, oh, let's see if this is relevant. But it was that effortless, like so there's no desire for anything.
What you're saying is it doesn't require thought. It doesn't require working through it and trying to figure it out and asking all these questions and playing out all the scenarios. And that's the mind when the mind is in this push mode. And trust me, I go into push mode all the time because my mind is always trying to figure stuff out. So I'm right there with you. If you're like, well, that's a really hard posture to take. Yeah, it is. But what these hosts of this podcast that I love said, they said that you've planted the seeds. You've planted the seeds. All the potential outcomes are already out there. Now it's time for you to move with the flow and respond to the tugs. And I'm going to throw in another example of tugs it's like a playful tug, but it was beautiful and it was perfect timing. I had gone to the store with one of my kiddos. I was coming home. We just needed one little thing at a store. And I always take the same route. I'm a creature of habit and I go on autopilot. And I'm pulling up to the street where I usually make a left. And I was like, you know what? I just feel like I'm supposed to go straight. I'm just going to go straight today. I don't know why. So I didn't question. I wasn't like, why would I go straight? What, I just went. The light was green, I went. And I got up to where I need to turn left, and I turned left. And then all of a sudden I see there's these balloons and these signs and these police cruisers with their lights on. And I'm going, what in the world is going on up here? It was our town hall. And at the town hall was a end of summer bash for the local kids. And it was free food, it was free toys, it was water bottles, and I mean, you name it. Like they had all the police and fire trucks and everything there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I was just wondering what I was going to do for dinner because I had to run a late errand. I've got kids at home waiting. I don't have anything defrosted. I don't know what I'm going to do. But even that wasn't, I was trying to figure out. It was just like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. We'll figure it out and just let it go. And then I got nudged to do this other turn, and there's dinner. So I went home and I picked up the kids, and they got loaded up with food and goodies and had a great time. And that was a fun example of the way the universe works. Like, it doesn't just want to respond to these massive requests that we have. It's like God, the universe, spirit cares about all the little details. All the little details. Like, what a sweet thing for me to be able to receive, for our family to be able to receive. I didn't have to worry about dinner.
Yeah.
And on top of that, there were toys and there were games and it was a fun time. And that was just because I never would have known that was going on if I wouldn't have just listened to the nudge and gone with it. Instead of saying, oh, that's just silly, I don't know why I would think that, and turning the other way. That would have been a push.
Yeah, yeah. And I just keep thinking about that. What we're talking about over and over again is this posture of, it's almost like no anxiety. As long as we're really clear, and this is the trick.
Yeah.
Are we really clear on what it is that we're asking for? Like, sometimes we can be so like laissez-faire, like just whatever, and sometimes we can be so prescriptive because, like, I mean, you're a mom of 4 kids, like you've got this to do and that to do and something else to do and something else to do. So sometimes you can't be lackadaisical, right? You think, oh, I can't just go around the corner and do this or that. I got to get home. I got stuff to do. I got to cook dinner, right? But something like, you could have gone home, you could have done all that, and it would have all been within your control, and you would have had exactly what you had thought that you wanted. But what your bigger ask was, I just want to eat dinner. Just want to be with my kids and have a good time. Like, that was the undercurrent of your ask, right? And because there was this undercurrent of an ask that was bigger than your desire to make dinner, you were willing to go with that. And it's like one of the, does that make sense? There's like,
and I'm gonna pick up on a nuance here that you didn't mention, but I just felt now, and we've talked about this before. It wasn't so much a thought of, oh crap, I have to make dinner, what am I gonna do? It was a feeling of, I just want to be with my kids. It's the end of summer, the school year is about to start. I don't have to figure out what's for dinner. I just want to have a good time. This could be a special, and it was a feeling. And because you always say the universe is a feeling universe, it's not a thinking universe, it's a feeling universe. I think that like whatever I was putting out was so strong because it was just pure feeling. It wasn't trying to effort and work through and figure it out. So there's a difference between pushing a thought out and making things happen, which I could have done if I came home and cooked dinner, I would have made it happen, or allowing that feeling of family and fun and joy and being filled and receiving to go out and be picked up by the universe.
I wonder how the purity of your emotion played into this too, because what you're describing is you just wanted to love on your kids. You just wanted to have a moment with your kids, that it wasn't difficult or rushing, or even cooking to a certain extent is taking time away from them, right? You just wanted to be with your kids. And there's almost like, I wonder, when the universe feels the purity of such requests if the strength of the nudge is impacted to the inner feeling nudge, right? So your feeling was love and your feeling was just being with them. And I'm wondering if the universe then gives you this strong internal nudge that leads you to this easier to make it happen pure way, like a really pure way.
I mean, I know the language the universe speaks is love. That is the universal language. So it's interesting because I'm thinking, okay, this poem, how could this be a response to love? But it is because we talk all the time about how we love these podcasts. We love recording. We get so much joy out of bringing up these ideas and pulling them apart and putting them out for the benefit of people who are listening so that they can take them and really gain some traction and some flow in their own lives as a result of this. And we love doing that. We love when people send us messages or comment and say, oh my gosh, and they bring up their ideas of how this applies. Like, it just, you can hear the energy in my voice. Like, I'm totally lit up by this. It's love. We love to do this. So it's a gift to us to get to do this. And I think the universe then responds with, oh, you want to put something out there that's really impactful. You love what you do. Here, let's just drop this in there. Here, let's just have you take another look at this podcast that you had bookmarked and wanted to listen to today, right now. Both of those at the same time. And then it's a gift that we get to share this and bring this and put this out. And it's all the language of love. Like, people think, oh, love, that's this one thing. But love is the undercurrent of everything. When you are in flow, you are in the stream of love. And it will express in all different ways, but that is love. That is pure love. Being able to express yourself authentically and vulnerably and honestly and with joy and peace. That is what love feels like.
I'm trying to think about, like, so when you just said that, I was like there was like almost like an equation. And it's not as simple as an equation, right? But yet there was some sort of, like, love when it's like received, or even like there's something that you said earlier, like this posture. I'm wondering about this posture. If we're receiving, it means we're receiving, because we talk about how our intuition is a two-way communication system between us and the divine. And if we know that love is the universal signature, right? Like, it has to be. Christy Marie Sheldon talks about love or above, and love is 500. So you always want to shoot for a 500 or above, right? Which above love is joy and peace and enlightenment that we know of. And it certainly, bliss is probably up there somewhere. I don't know where bliss is, but it's got to be up there above love even. And so I'm wondering, when we're thinking about receiving, it's always two-way communication. So sometimes the universe is trying to, like, we're submitting thoughts that have feelings, and those feelings are going out into the universe. And if they're for our and others' benefit and the higher good, then the universe is submitting back to us, and we're either blocking those or we're receiving, right? But sometimes we're generating the love. We're generating the joy. We're generating the peace. We're not just a initial receiver. We're what is that? It's not a conduit, but we're submitting, like we're putting out into the universe something that's going to be received by the universe, and the universe is going to, we're receiving that.
Here's where I think the difference is. We're gonna confuse people because we just said don't push. Like, the mind is a receiver, not a transmitter.
Right.
But what you're talking about is transmitting love, which comes from the heart chakra, not the mind.
Yes.
So your transmitter, where you put out, is actually through feeling, is through the heart chakra. And where you receive is the mind is going to receive, like you're not gonna feel a nudge to pick up a poem and have that be received in your heart. Like that's going to be a nudge, and your mind's going to go, oh, that's interesting, and file it away. These things, like the mind is the ultimate receiver, and I think the heart is the space of this ultimate generator and this transmitter.
Maybe. I'm just
We're
gonna
just
kind of
putting
riff
out
on this.
theories here right now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, I want to know what you think about. I want to know
Okay.
what you think about this though, because
Okay.
that I hear what you're saying, but then
Yeah.
I'm thinking, I talk about intuition as being the sixth sense,
Mhm.
which is a feeling sense. There's no thinking
Yeah.
that goes into it.
Yeah.
So when I had that happen, I didn't even know that my mind registered kind of, but it was more like my body first said, "Oh, I'm supposed to take this." Then my mind registered as, well, just do it. Like, it's just a piece of paper. It's flat. Put it in the thing.
Right, right.
If it ends up not being something, it's no harm, no foul. Right. So I'm wondering what you're thinking about
Yeah.
that.
Oh, so I'm thinking, so you got the nudge, you got the tug, you put it in, but it took the mind
Yep.
being open
Yep.
for us to put these together.
Yes.
It wasn't us figuring it out. It was
Yes.
us allowing it and receiving it when the timing was right.
Right.
So I think what they were saying was we plant the seeds, like we put it out there. We enjoy this, bring us the topics, and we allow whatever's going to come up. And this is pretty much how we figure out all of our topics. When it feels right, when the timing is right, when the information is there, we go with it. We block the reception by thinking it through and figuring it out. If you would have been like, well, I brought this poem and I got to figure out why I brought this poem, and it could have happened that I never would have listened to the podcast.
Yes.
Because he would have been like, I want to show you this poem, and I wouldn't have turned the podcast on, and then it wouldn't have happened.
Right.
So we do ourselves a disservice when we try to figure things out versus just allowing them to bubble up and float into the mind when it's the right time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. So I want to kind of shift gears a little bit. I was thinking about something earlier, and I was thinking about you talk something that you said earlier kind of piqued my interest, and you were talking about this pure potential of our mind to receive. And I got the image of a baby in utero, and I imagined them just receiving nutrients. So they're not making demands of mom. They're not saying, hey, give me a hamburger, or now you are getting nudged to have certain things, but that's you, right? Yeah. So the child, though, is in this pure receptivity. If it's something good that's transpiring, they're receiving that. If it's something not good, they're receiving that. They're just in a space of potential. And so this is why we say we know that what's happening in utero is extremely important. Like this is a fundamental time where it sets up almost like a subconscious, it almost like starts your operating system, like your brain, in saying what to expect. Like if you don't get nutrients, it can create a food scarcity, right? Like you have long periods of not getting nutrients. Yep. Or you get the improper types of nutrients, right? They're not nutrients at all, toxins. So I'm wondering, like, I'm just thinking about the origin of our pure potential, because obviously pre-utero, that's the purest potential because we're in the universe.
Yeah.
Okay, go. Yeah.
So these Law of One tarot cards are archetypes.
Wait, what are you talking about? The Law of One tarot cards.
So we're going back to the original topic of the podcast that I'm referencing was the archetype of the matrix of the mind.
And where would they look more into this?
So you can go to LL Research's website. You can find information there on the tarot. You can even search Tarot Law of One, and it should come up for you. The card they're referencing is the Magician in tarot, but you really need to look at the pictures and the write-up from Law of One because they're slightly different. They're like an Egyptian looking card. But the archetype is, if this person, or if this representation were ideal with no blemishes, this is what it would be. So the mind, before inputs create neural pathways, is just pure potential. All things are possible. Anything can be received. Its nature is a receiver. All things are possible. All its job is to do is take the inputs, and then, and then it starts working like a computer. But when you get your computer, before they even put the operating system or anything into it, all it is potential. There's nothing else there. Nothing is programmed. There's no operating system. There are no apps, nothing. It's just potential. The potential is limitless. It could become anything. It could store anything. It could create anything. And its only job is to receive, because it's not going to generate, because it has no programs. It's got no operating system. It won't do anything on its own. It will only receive what's fed into it. And therefore, all of our minds that we're working with right now have been programmed. There are operating systems, there are neural pathways. Some of them are stronger than others, and we can create new ones. We know that. That's how this works. But that pure potential is no longer present. But what's being suggested is the way in which we move more close to the pure potential, to the archetype of this unblemished mind, is by putting ourselves in a posture of receptivity versus pushing, of being pulled and allowing versus process, or versus what was I trying to say? Figuring things out and efforting through them. So does that help, knowing that that's an archetype versus?
Yeah. And what it got me thinking though is I had a thought with this, and I don't know how it relates to this now that I was thinking of, because I can't tell if this is pushing or not. But when I think about pure potential, we still have pure potential. It's not pure, but every single thing that we do that is aligned with receptivity and with the purity of the laws of the universe, we think that if it took us 50 years to become these versions of us, that it's going to take us 50 years to undo it. And that's just not true. The reality is that the universe, this is what miracles are. It's things that happen that don't make sense given our concept of how we think the world should work.
Yeah.
But yet, all it is really us connecting with the universe in a way that allows for the universe to give us something that it wants to give us, because it wants us to birth that wonder in the world, because it's not just for us, it's for humanity. It's not even just for humanity, it's for all species, because we're one with not only humans, but with the trees and rocks and the sky and all the elements and things like that, right?
Yeah.
So I got to thinking when you were talking about this so all of this is still possible, but there's almost like you can't ignore that our system needs either a reboot, or it needs an upgrade, or it needs defrag. Yeah. Like there's like a defrag. I know sometimes I'm like, well, I don't know, like I'll hit that defrag. It says, well, system defrag, it'll make it go faster. Okay. And so that to me is almost like therapy. Defragging is like undoing your current belief system.
Yeah.
And and then a system optimization, it'll say. And so to me, all of the concepts that we're talking about, when we understand the true nature of the way that we interconnect with the universe, we can make this hard. We can drum up whatever we want to do in this life, and we can go along with the whole, gosh, life's hard. Man, it's hard. And we can do that,
yeah.
Or else we can choose to live in a way that it's like, well, it doesn't have to be hard.
Yeah.
It's going to be hard if we want it to look a very particular way. But if we're open to what the universe is bringing to us, given what we're uniquely capable of doing, and we don't go against that, then life can actually be for us and for everybody around us.
All right.
Just
Here we go.
blow it up.
So I started with, when you're talking about this, I started with the first key is the awareness of the potential. So again, you guys really need to get into Law of One and Ra if you haven't, because we're going to reference it and it's going to make a little bit of sense, but it'll make way more sense if you dig in. But Ra delivers their interpretation of tarot, the major arcana of the tarot, in order for us to do this thing, this experience of this life better, in order for us to have a better understanding, in order for us to, instead of seeking money and success and fame and material objects, to seek first to understand. Like our first goal of being alive is literally to come here to better understand selves, others, the way things work.
Okay, so are you saying, is it kind of like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
So it's like, to wake up,
right?
To
become
wake
aware.
up, become aware, and say, what is going on? What is this all about?
Yeah.
Is this about accumulation, gathering, getting bigger houses, bigger cars?
Like,
bigger...
how
do
the heck do I know the game I'm playing if I haven't even read the rule book? I don't know. I just see other people around here running around picking things up and storing them in their houses. So I think that's what I'm supposed to do.
Right.
I don't know the rule book though. No one ever told me the rule book. Ra says, here's some archetypes that will help you figure out.
Can you explain an archetype? I don't think
Sure. So it's a literary term, but an archetype is like an example of like a type of character, or usually it's referring to a person or a type of character. So like the archetype of the jester. The jester shows up in Shakespeare all the time, shows up in all of these different works and books and movies. Or the archetype of
is it an ideal?
Yeah, it's an ideal. Yeah,
okay,
like the crone, the old woman in the woods, the crone. It's just something that other things are modeled off of.
Okay.
So okay, so where was I going with this? So once we become aware of the fact that there's a rule book, we're here, and there's actually purpose and meaning behind this. And all we need to do is just become aware of that. We don't even need to figure out what the meaning and the purpose is at first. We just need to become aware of the fact that there is a meaning and a purpose to this. Once we do that, and we start allowing information to come in that we previously probably had firewalls up against, right? Like if we're talking computer metaphor, we saw all of this information that was coming at us as viruses. Oh no, can't take that, and that's scary. That doesn't compute with what I got going on. That doesn't match the neural pathways that I already have built. That doesn't match the story that I've been told for the past 40 years of my life. Nope, not good. If we lower those firewalls and just allow information, and just instead of taking that defensive posture, we take a curious posture, because curiosity is not going to kill you. Going against judgment and just getting curious is a really great posture to have. It doesn't say I accept everything that's coming. It just says, let me take another look at what might actually be happening here. That allows us to be capable of shifting and becoming more like that archetype of pure potential of the mind. It allows us to start dismantling the blocks that we had in the way, those firewalls that we had in the way, so that we can take in information and not get defensive and judgmental, and not try to work so hard at figuring it all out.
So I'm wondering if it would be helpful to kind of riff on, like, if somebody's like, yeah, I'm in, like, I want to be in a posture of receiving instead of pushing. Where does one begin with that? How does one get in a space of receiving? I heard you say, what did you just say? You said, how did you say it? You were talking about,
Awareness of potential, capable of shifting, created blocks like firewalls versus viruses, curiosity over judgment.
Curiosity over judgment.
Yeah.
So that's one way.
Yep.
You would be, when things come in, if you're going to receive. So think about this, what she's describing, like, because if you're like, oh, this and this and this is happening, so you've already got the meaning on lockdown, you can't receive a new concept. You can't receive a new way to look at what's happening in front of you. And here's the thing, for me, I'm always like, if somebody around me and a group of people around me are all like, here's my interpretation over and over and over, and I'm frustrated because I can't see it, I'm either in a space that I have to leave that space, and maybe it's a closed door and there's an open door somewhere else, and I'm being pulled in. I'm being pulled to receive, right? Because you're talking about a pulling posture.
Yep.
Something pulling you. That was your
Yep.
description. And so if I'm turned this way and I'm trying to push my way into this space, but meanwhile I just turn around.
Being there feels like that, and I know that I feel when I'm in certain spaces, I physically feel like something's pushing me away.
Yeah.
And I know it's time to step back.
Yeah.
I can't stay in that space.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that posture of number one, if you think about it and you're like, I'm continuing to feel pushed in this space, either I'm pushing or I'm being pushed. What if you were to turn the other way? What if you were to turn your orientation away from this? Technically, if you're being pushed in this direction, what if you were to turn the other way and you were to go with the current? Right? So that's one thing to consider, is it a closed door? There's an open door if you were just to turn around and go in a different direction. And then number two, a curiosity of being curious about something and saying, like, I wonder what's happening here, and opening yourself up beyond certainty and definitive meaning. Yeah. And allowing yourself to maybe hear something from somebody else's perspective, which, like Bridget just said, when, like, so often in our world, there's so many people that are like standing around going, if I hear your perspective, if I know how you live, if you live different than me, I'm at risk of changing everything. No, you're not. You're completely capable of hearing new information and still retaining who you are. And you're still taking in information. It's not like new information changes you definitively.
Or hearing new information and not viewing it as a change, but viewing it as pulling you closer to your authentic expression. Because I know personally who I am today is light years different than who I was a decade, 2 decades ago. I mean, completely. I wouldn't have liked me. But this is the more authentic expression of me. I was told not to like me. But now I was given new information, and instead of pushing it away, it's like the universe saying, here, read this, look at this, just take a minute and take it in. It's like someone giving you a new book and you're going, oh, no thanks, I've been told about that, I'm not interested. I took it in, and what happened was I allowed it to pull me into the more authentic expression of myself. Okay,
I gotta say something. When you just did that with the book, it's like the universe tried to give you a gift. And if you were to say, no, I've heard about that. Number one, you're saying that the people around you are more important than the universe. And how you're perceived with those people is more important than what the universe wants of you. And the universe is trying to gift you with something that makes you your higher self, but it will allow you to reject it. Yeah. You get to say no to gifts.
Free will.
All day.
And the universe has infinite delivery methods. So it could be a book a friend gives you. It could be walking into a store and hearing someone talking on the radio. It could be a piece of paper that flies out someone's window and lands on your windshield. It could literally be any delivery method possible. The universe will give you so many opportunities to follow the path that you came here to follow, to play the right game, to have your unique rule book and go, oh, that's what I'm supposed to be doing here.
you saying that reminded me that of another way that somebody can follow this pulling, this receptivity, is to notice how they're feeling.
Yeah.
So because it's a feeling universe, every single thing you described is, if it's almost like sledding. It's like it's like doing, like skiing, if you're into skiing, whatever it is that brings you tremendous joy. It's like going kayaking, right? But you're literally doing something that feels or joyous,
Yeah.
or I love this, I would do this for hours. It's the thing that you're doing that you're like, you lose track of time.
Yep.
Because you're not like doing time. You're like actually invested in it, and like, oh my gosh, you're geeking out over something. You're like, wow, I just picked up a poem that I didn't even know what I was doing with it. And here you are talking about this topic, and it's like, as soon as we were done reading, like I was done reading this yesterday, we were like, can you believe this?
Just stop right there. Hold on a second. I need to let me gather all the parts of myself that just melted all over the floor and figure out what's happening here. Not even figure it out, but just receive what just took place.
Yeah.
Because it was completely like, I did nothing, you did nothing. We were just receivers in this whole thing.
Yeah.
And because we acted as probably not perfect receivers, but decent receivers, maybe there was some radio static, but decent enough receivers, this podcast that's happening right now came out because of that.
Exactly. Exactly. And it's because of that, listening to the nudges, effortless. When the nudge came up, when she told the topic, and we had just said the episode we had just recorded, we were like, that sucked, and let's stop it, right? And I was like, wait, this topic you had really seemed inspired.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting too. Let me pull out my podcast notes, which has this attached. And as soon as we saw this, we were like, yes. Like, you saw the energy that just came up. It's that kind of energy that says it's propelling you forward. It literally is pulling you. It's something outside of you going, come here, like, participate in this. This is amazing. And by me receiving that energetic shift, that energy that says, woo, by me receiving that, then it like brings that alive in our topic, right?
You just said inspire or inspiration.
Yeah.
I don't know if you knew why you said that
No.
word, but the etymology of inspiration is literally to be under the immediate influence of God. So the word for God or spirit was also the word for breath or breathing. To inspire is to take in spirit, or to take in God, or to allow in God, or to receive God. So what happened was inspired was literally God giving, us receiving, and that is the act of inspiration, being blown into. That word also connects to when it was like, and God breathed into like Adam and Eve, this vision of breath. That's because the blowing was inspiriting Adam and Eve, was like literally making these lumps of clay forms into God-like things, like putting the God, the divinity into the humanness.
I love this. We're gonna have to, okay, we're okay, inspired. Okay, so you're describing the inspiration or the starting of something, right? To be inspired is to co-create and follow where spirit is taking us.
Yeah.
We've got to do an episode on inspiration and enthusiasm.
I was gonna say an expression.
Okay, well, maybe we're adding that too. But I used to tell my teams all the time,
and theos,
to be
enthusiasm,
which is to be filled with God.
Yeah.
To be filled with God. So imagine that you're inspired to do something, but then you're enthusiastic about it because you were inspired to do it. And that's why you're inspired to do it, is because, or you're enthusiastic about doing it because you were inspired. You will find enthusiasm in something that you're inspired to do. And that's where I think in all of this if you have that receiving in this posture being pulled into something, it's something you're inspired to do and you're enthusiastic about doing it because you can't help but feel God and the universe in it.
Yeah, and I think that's the perfect place to bring this back around to.
Do it.
It's just follow, yeah, just to follow. So that tug, the pull that you feel, is a signal to your body first and your mind that there's something here. That it's like if you imagine, I like to talk about this golden thread. If you imagine this golden thread that connects you with the divine, with like the highest purpose for your life. And sometimes in life, we're like dancing around it. Like we may be really far away from it, but we get super close to it. And then all of a sudden it's like it grabs us and it tugs us. And we remember there is something here. Like there is something from outside of myself is trying to nudge me or to tell me something. And if you get really still and pay attention to the way that your body feels and responds when those tugs happen, you're going to get closer and closer and closer and closer to that golden thread. It's like, do you ever drop one of those pennies and then the tube where it swirls around and around and around? Good God, we're going around and around and around. But eventually we're going to be pulled. Gravity is going to pull that golden thread, that higher self, God is going to pull us so strongly that we will drop right into that most authentic, highest expression for our lives.
If we allow ourselves to receive.
Yeah. And it's an if, because there's always free will. The universe always allows free will.
So the last thing I want to say on this before we wrap up is that this is a practice. I'm still practicing. You're still practicing. The first step is awareness. Like we geek out over this because we literally care about our existence and what we're doing here. And we want to be the highest reflections of, what we're meant to do. That doesn't mean we are. It means that we care about that. Yeah. And so all of these concepts are meant to be practiced, which also means they're meant to be discussed. We discuss it because we want to keep riffing. We want to keep understanding. Like the greatest scientists of the world riff with each other and keep talking about it, because new input is helpful when we're understanding this. And the more we practice it, the more second nature it becomes, the more it becomes part of us. It's like when we learn math and you learn 2 + 2 is 4. When you first learn you're like, 2 + 2 is what? 2 + 2 is what? And then finally you're like 4, 4, 4. And then it's now 2 + 2 is 4. Yeah. You know? So it's like that, so don't become frustrated when you recognize that you're pushing against whatever's happening. It's just like meditation. When you recognize that a thought is coming through, you allow for it to just pass on, as opposed to being frustrated by pushing it away. There's an allowance of that. And there's the same thing with practicing receptivity and pulling versus pushing. Yeah.
Beautiful. Special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover. You can learn more about Melissa at melissamossart.com. And thanks to Cloud Cult for our podcast music from their song There's So Much Energy in Us. Find out more at cloudcult.com. And thank you for listening. And until next time, peace, love, and light.